In this tutorial, I'm going to introduce you to the assessment building tools within Blackboard so that you can use those with your students over the coming days and hopefully not weeks, but if necessary, the coming weeks. In order to do that, you're going to have to go into one of your live courses. Again, I'm going to be using one of our training modules here, so it's not going to look exactly like one of your live courses, but once we get into the actual content folder, it should look the same. So we're going to go into your content folder. And then I'm going to go into actually a folder that I use for training purposes so that I can build everything within the same place. That way it doesn't confuse other people being trained within this course. Once you're in the folder or the module that you'd like to build your assessment in, we're going to go down under Assessments. And here you're going to actually click on Test. If you have a pre-existing test, you can actually reuse those here, and you'll see that we have a lot of different types of tests that have been created within this training environment. So for this purpose, I'm going to create a new test. The first thing that you have to do is give it a name. So I'm going to call this a Unit 3 assessment. You can give it a description if you'd like. Is designed to assess your understanding of content covered in Unit 3 of Chemistry 110. Okay, one thing that I do recommend is that you try and keep your font to at least size 14 or larger, and you want to stick with one of your accessible fonts. That's either Arial, you can look at Georgia, Helvetica, Impact, Tahoma. Tahoma is one that I would use by default if you can. Your accessible fonts are usually your sans scripts. They do not have the points. I'll show you an example. If you were to go to Book Antiqua, you'll notice that for these, it tends to have more points. So you can see the difference here. The ends of the letters tend to be more pointed and turned down. So we want to stick with ones that are straight, that don't have the curved ends. So we're going to do that. So we're going to put our description here. You can put your instructions here as well. They'll show up at the beginning of the test. Complete the assessment using your notes or book to help you. Now, one thing that you need to keep in mind is that this will be an online assessment, and there are two things you can do here. If you give them a multiple choice assessment, it can be self-graded, but just expect that they're probably going to be using an outside source. Because of the fact that we're not using a test moderator or some kind of proctoring program at this point, there's a good likelihood that a number of your students are going to be either Googling answers, looking up in the book, something of that nature. So keep in mind that you may want to design this as an open book test. The other option that you have is to make this an assessment that requires application of knowledge. Now that mean that you have to do more in terms of grading. It may be more open-ended questions. These will not be self-graded necessarily, but it would require them to actually apply their knowledge in a more real-world setting. But again, it may require for you to grade more. So just keep in mind that if you're giving them the multiple choice assessments, if you're giving them more true false, multiple choice, fill in the blank, that kind of stuff, those are self-graded. It will make your life easier in terms of grading, but you do need to keep in mind that because of the online environment that we're having to work in with the current situation, that you need to just take into account that they're probably going to be using some outside sources. Now that we have that in place, we're going to go ahead and hit Submit. So we have now the option to create questions. We have several different types here. I'm going to go through several of these. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to focus primarily on the ones that are self-grading because of the fact that those are the ones that are going to be the easiest for you to use at this point in time. I will briefly talk about some of the others, but I want to really focus our time, without making this an incredibly long webinar type video, without making it incredibly long, I want to give you some options here that will hopefully make your life a little bit easier. So the first one I'm going to come down to is our multiple choice. So let's click on multiple choice. You do not have to give the question a title. That is optional. You do have to give it text. So let's take a look at how that works. You can actually include videos here. You can include a reading passage. You could include a section of reading and then have a question directly below that. So let's say I wanted to do that. I wanted to include a reading passage. I'm going to go over to history.com real quick, and I'm going to just pull an article that takes just a second to come up. They have some articles typically that go, okay, so we're going to go here, and I'm just going to pull up some stuff here. I want to pull that up. I want to have them read. If that's the case, I'm going to actually come over and just actually highlight the portion that I want them to read. And I'm just going to copy a section of it so you can see how this works. Now, you cannot do a paste like this. It will not let you do it. So you have to actually go in and hold control down and hit V. Okay. And then I would suggest that you come in here and you remove the links. In order to do that effectively, you actually do have to highlight the entire highlighted text and remove link. Then you're going to want to go in and actually change the font color. I know it's a little bit tedious, but it's going to be a little bit confusing if you don't. Take out the I'm not sure why that's staying red. Let's go back and see if we can make that black again. It's still showing a little bit of... So anyway, I'm not going to focus on the formatting for this purpose, but you do want to go through and make sure your formatting is correct. You would want to take out any links of that sort. And then at the bottom, you might want to say, according to the article above, where did the pandemic begin? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of this. You want to make sure it's paragraph text. You want to make sure that the font is accessible, so I'm going to stick with Tahoma, and I'm going to set it all at 14. That is big enough to be readable in the actual test. And then you might want to put question. And then you could even bold that if you want. It doesn't give meaning to the word, but it highlights it for someone who's reading it. And then at the bottom, you're going to come down. You have some options. You can do Arabic numbers, Roman numerals, uppercase, lowercase. I tend to like the uppercase. And I actually would recommend that you go horizontal. One of the reasons for that is if you go vertical and they think, oh, A looks right, they may not even read the remainder of the questions. If they read horizontally for whatever reason, they tend to read all the way across. So that again is your preference. So let's say we're going to give them 4 choices. We have to put one in each option here. In this case, I believe it was the let's see. I believe they said it was. Yep. Appeared in the Guizhou province of southwest China. So we're going to go ahead and put that in. And then let's say, okay. Again, you have to format each of these. Make sure you're consistent with your sizing and everything so that it's readable. We're going to try and be consistent with that. That is something that you have to think about in terms of accessibility, making sure that you're keeping that in mind because of the fact that so many of our students are going to have to interact with this. If it was only a handful of people dealing with our online environment, that would be different. But now that we're having to really think about this in terms of a larger scale, we do have to be more careful about how we present things online. Now, you can also give feedback. So if you want to say, great job, obviously you've been doing your reading. Okay, again, we're going to stick with our font and our font size. You can also come in here and give them Sometimes it gets a little finicky about trying to delete stuff. So you may have to play with placing that just to make sure it works. Incorrect response, you can also do that. Sorry, incorrect. Please look back at the article and look for details about where the pandemic began. Give them some feedback on what they need to be looking for. I'm going to put that in there. And then here is something else that you can be thinking about, because if you're thinking that you may create more of a cumulative exam towards the end, it may be worth it to start putting some keywords and some categories and that kind of things in here. So categories, you might put pandemic. For topics, world health. Level of difficulty, you might think of this one as easy. Keywords, China. Keywords, pandemic. Keywords, flu. Keywords, spread. And you can figure out however you want to do that. The key is that this actually helps you go back if you need to find other ones about these topics and you want to be able to search for these for future exams. You can actually search for existing questions and be able to create future ones. The instructor notes are useful if this is an assessment that might be used by other instructors. You can actually pull these same assessments for other instructors that are teaching the same course, and this would be used for something like if you're using this question, it refers to a specific part of the notes or a specific part of a slideshow or something like that. You could actually put that information in here, and that would allow them to be able to reference that particular part. So let's say Unit 1, Session 3 notes for details on this question. Okay, so we're done with that, and we're going to go in and hit submit. And you'll see here, here's your article section, here's your question, here are your choices, correct feedback, incorrect feedback. Now you don't necessarily have to put the correct and incorrect feedback on every one of these. That's entirely up to you. In your settings, as we look at these, as we actually deploy this, we're going to talk to a little bit about thinking about multiple attempts and why we need to do that. So just kind of keep in your mind thinking about how you can give feedback that might help with that as well. So that's how you set up a multiple choice. There's also the option of multiple answer. Set it up very, very similarly. Which of the, and this is a very, very elementary version, but is a way of representing the name of our state. Okay, so like I said, super elementary version of doing this, but it works for the purpose we have here. Again, I'm going to go horizontal, answer numbering, I want to go A, B, C, D. Okay, you can allow partial credit. You can also show answers in random order. That means if two people happen to be taking it in the same area, then you can actually have it where it mixes up the answers and they wouldn't necessarily be presented in the same order. We're going to have 4 possible answers. So we could say it's actually spelled out. So that could be a correct answer. That would not be a correct answer. That would not be a correct answer. That one could be a correct answer. So in this case, multiple answers means that multiple answers within this same question could still be correct. Okay, so partial credit we would want to say is potentially 50%, because they would have to get one of the 2 correct in order to get partial credit for this one. Again, you can give your feedback for correct response or incorrect response. You could say abbreviations. You know, whatever topics, things like that you want to put in here, and then hit submit. Oop, I do have to put in the potential point value here. Partial percent, that's 50% as well. Okay, so we're going to hit submit there. So now you can see we have 2 different types of questions that are going to show up here. There's 2 correct questions. They each two correct answers, they both count 50%. Now, if you had 3, you might want to set them at 33% each, or something like that. That's up to you how you weight them. The next one we're going to look at real quickly is let's go to ordering. In this case, you say, you put the question in like we have with the others. Is the correct, we're going to look at historical events. Series of events from history. Okay. And that may not be the best way to word that, but you get the basic gist here. We're going to be looking at historical events and trying to figure out which ones go in the best answers. So we're going to put them in order. That's probably going to work best to put them in order that way. So answer 1 should be, let's say, the Great Pyramids were constructed. Again, you want to think about your fonts and your font sizes. Let's say Alexander the Great conquered much of the known world. Again, we're going to stick with that. Answer 3, Amelia Hart. On her attempt to fly around the world. The World Trade Center is attacked by Okay, so you put your events in however you want them there, put them in order, and then you go next. And you tell them the correct position. So here's the thing. I'm actually going to go back. I want to go back 1. I think we can go back and play with that. You want to make sure that the positions don't necessarily line up. You want the correct order here. You want the display order to obviously not to be the correct order. So we're going to mix these up. We want to shift these around. So this is the order they would be displayed in. This is the correct order. Okay? So then you can give the feedback if you want. You can give your labels if you want. Again, the instructor notes. I'm not going to go through all of those in each question type. I just want to show you the gist of what we're doing here. So here's the correct position. Here's the position they would show in the test. We're going to go ahead and hit submit. Obviously, these are not Chemistry 110 questions. I'm just playing with how we could potentially create questions. Okay. So let's look at a couple other forms. We have fill in the blank. Here's your question text, your answers. So we're going to go proper way to write the abbreviation for Florida prior to the 1990s was blank. The proper way to write the abbreviation today is FL. I have to spell check that. Okay, so then we're going to go down and write the answer here. Okay, answer 1, FLA. So I'm actually just going to put one answer in here. And it's going to be case sensitive because abbreviations are always capital. So then we have the feedback options here. Now what that means is if they put FLA and it's not capitalized, then it wouldn't be counted as correct. So again, your feedback, your categories, your instructor notes, and submit. So now you'll see we have our multiple choice, we have our multiple answers, we have our putting things in the correct order, and now we have our fill in the blank. Okay, 1990s was blank. The proper way to write the abbreviation today is FL. The answer would be an exact match, FLA. Now, as we're doing this, you can play with the point values. On this top right-hand side is the point value. So let's say this one, I want this to be worth 15 points. Didn't hit save there. 15 points, and hit submit. So now my multiple choice might be worth 15 points. Let's say I want this one to be worth 15 points. I want the ordering to be worth 20 points. But I only want my fill in the blank to be worth 5. I can hit submit. You'll also notice you have the option of making it extra credit. So let's make our abbreviation actually only 5 extra credit points. So if they get it wrong, it doesn't count against them, but it can count as extra credit. So you can play with all your point values there as well. Now you also have file response. Now this is an interesting one. In this case, they have to upload a file. So this works really well if you have a foreign language or something where they need to actually record themselves doing something, or you want to see an example of them doing something, so you need to actually see them do it. So let's say you have you want to see them interact with something in Spanish. So order your dinner, or let's say order a dinner for yourself and your significant other while out on a date. You need to speak in Spanish only and should include an appetizer, a main dish, and let's start with a drink. A drink, an appetizer, a main dish, and a dessert for both of you. Record a video of yourself ordering your dinner and upload the video to this assignment. Be sure to use proper manners when ordering and use proper introductions and as well. Okay, so in this kind of situation, since we're kind of in a scenario now where in those classes we really might be struggling with how do we get to see how this would work, and you guys are kind of being thrown in head first. This might be a way that you can actually have them upload a file of themselves. This can also be working on an ongoing essay, something of that nature. You can really play with this a little bit. You could do an entire test of them just uploading videos of themselves or uploading essay prompts. There's a lot of different ways that you could do this. You could give them a series of essay prompts, have them work on them over a week-long period, and upload them. Do a series of shorter essay prompts or something of that nature, and upload their file. You can also add a rubric. Again, I don't have time to go through all of the ins and outs of a rubric, but I can show you real quickly what that looks like. If you have specific criteria that you use in an existing rubric, you can actually just copy those over. If you want to change your criteria, you just hit edit, you change the title of it and hit save. You put in what those different descriptions of achievement levels look like, what the percentage or the point values look like, and you hit submit. They can actually see that rubric. So if you're looking for certain things in that interaction, if it's a video or something, you can do that. They can actually do this on their phone or tablet or on their laptop. And then if they're on their phone or tablet, they could use the Blackboard Collaborate, or not Blackboard Collaborate, the Blackboard app, and actually do that entirely through the Blackboard application. So you have an option here as well that would allow them to interact and then upload that. So once you have all that information in, you hit submit, and now we have that as well. So here's your question, and they would have to upload a file. So in this case, I would say this is probably worth more. I'm going to say this is worth 45 points, and I'm going to submit. Okay. Now, the other types of questions that we typically see the most are we have some matching. And in this case, we have, I'm just going to show you real quick what these look like. You have the question answer pair 1. Your question goes here, the answer goes here. If you want to give partial credit, you enter the percentage here. The next one, you have a question here, an answer here. So let me show you what this looks like real quickly. Again, I'm just going to stick with something very quick. So if I wanted to do North Carolina, NC, it's 25%, so I'm guessing there's probably 4 matching here. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just going to put in something very quick here. Okay, and then if you come down here, I want to add some unmatched answers because I want to give them something more than just the 4. So it's gonna reset this just a little bit. Match the state with its abbreviation. Okay, so I'm going to come back down here, and I should have some extra spaces now for some additional answers. So I'm going to put in MA, CA, MD, and NV. So they have some additional choices. That way it's not just the 4. I like to just randomly mix them. That way I don't have to worry about setting it. You can do your feedback in your categories, your instructor notes, and then hit submit. And you can see here you have your questions and your answer items. These will be in random order in the actual assessment. Okay, so right now we've gone through 5 or 6 different question types. All but one of these are self-grading. The only one that would not be would be the uploading a file. But I know in particular this one is going to be valuable for specifically our foreign language instructors that are trying to figure out how to be able to evaluate a student's ability to actually interact with the language. Now, I'll go through a couple of more. I would suggest that if you're interested in doing these assessments, and the longer that we are in this e-learning environment, the more likely that we're going to have to do this. Play with some of these different settings and figure out which ones are going to work. We do have the essay option. You put your test question here in 500 words. Explain the concept of constructivism, and I'm sure I didn't spell that right. Maybe I did. And how it applies to education. Be sure to include multiple sources and cite your references throughout. Okay. Actually, I think I did spell that right, but that's okay. So you put your topic, and if you want to put an example of a correct response, you can. Now, one thing that I will tell you that is considered best practice with this kind of thing is to give them some examples of. That does not necessarily mean right here. It means that if you're expecting them to write an essay, give them some examples of a good response and a bad response, and allow them to actually see what those look like, because oftentimes they don't know. and giving them that information is really super helpful. Then again, if you want to add a rubric to the essay, you can add one here. If you have an essay writing rubric, there are lots of examples of them online. You can actually copy and paste those in here as well. Add your categories, your instructor notes, and then hit submit. And there we go. So we've got our basics here, and then you can also do short answer. Short answer creates a similar setup to the essay. You'll see that it's basically the same setup. It just doesn't give them as much space to write. So, why did the Normandy invasion have such a historical importance in the and that's a horribly written prompt, but you get the gist. Set the number of rows that will display in the answer field. You have rows that they can fill in. So if you want to do 2 or 3, that gives them a certain amount of space that they have to fill in. Again, you do it, and you go over, and you'll see what it looks like when they go in. So we've got several different question types. Once we finish that, we're going to save our test. And then we are more or less done. We can go back into test surveys and pools and see it, or we can go to our content. We can go down to my folder here. We can go all the way to the bottom because that's where it should be now. Should be. Oh, I probably have to actually. I skipped a step, excuse me. I've been making videos all day and I just missed a step. Now to actually deploy it, I'm going to go to assessments and then tests. You will see now that I have my test down here, my Unit 3 assessment. I want to submit it. It's here. I have all of my instructions here. Now, here's what we need to do. You want to show the test description before the students begin. Okay. Complete the assessment using your notes or book to help you. Show instructions to students before they begin the test. Yes. Open test in a new window. No, I do not want to. Do I want to make it available? Yes. Now? Yes or no? I do want to go ahead and do that. Do I want to make a new announcement? Do I want there to be an announcement in Blackboard that shows up when they first log in? Yeah, we can do that. Do I want to allow multiple attempts? I do. I want to recommend that you probably do 2 to 3 attempts, and it's going to go with their highest graded attempt. Okay. And you can also make it password protected. Typically, we just do that if it's in the classroom. You can write the password on the board. The current scenario, I would not suggest that. And you can set a due date. So you can say this is due by the 20th at 5:00 p.m. And then you can say, don't let them start it if the due date is passed. So you can tell them it is now available and they have until 5 p.m. on Friday to get it done. I suggest allowing them to take multiple attempts, and here is the reasoning behind that. A lot of our students did not sign up to take online courses. I know many of you did not sign up to teach online courses. And please keep in mind that many of them do not have any experience with this. There's a good likelihood that they may make mistakes in trying to submit online assessments. They may click the wrong buttons. They may hit forward before they're ready to move forward. So just keep in mind that we need to show some grace in that, give them a little bit of leeway in that and let them get used to that, especially in the first couple times that you have to do an assessment. You're in a scenario where you're having to teach in an unfamiliar environment, and they're very much in a scenario where they're having to take a course in an unfamiliar environment. We're all kind of trying to figure out the best way to do this in the current scenario. So I would recommend, we're not requiring it, but I would recommend that you allow multiple attempts so that if they do make mistakes, they can go back and fix these. And again, keep in mind too that if you're allowing them to do multiple choice, things that they can look up, that they can pull a book out for, chances are you're going to have some of them do that. So keep in mind that you're going to want to plan for that. Plan for the fact that unless it's open-ended and it's more application oriented, they are going to be looking those answers up. Just plan for that scenario. If you want to use more open-ended application-ended questions, that's okay, but just plan for that in terms of how much time it's going to take for you to be able to grade those questions, and how many students you're going to have to interact with in terms of grading. Once we have those in place, we're going to hit submit. And now, if I go all the way to the bottom, I have my Unit 3 assessment. You see the instructions. It allows multiple attempts. It allows for it to be saved and resumed later. We recommend this because if somebody loses connectivity and that's not set, then it automatically logs their attempt. It also tells them the due date, and it cannot be started after that date. So once they hit begin, it takes them into the questions and they can start. And that is pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Your first stop will be the IT help desk. If they can't answer it, they will forward that on to the right people, and we will get you help on it. We will be posting additional resources in the coming days. We'll also be hosting some additional training seminars and posting some additional webinars as well. So hopefully this will at least get you started as you're looking at how you can do online assessments with the current scenario that we have. Hopefully this won't last very long and we can get everybody back in the classroom. But in the meantime, this will get you going. Again, if there's anything we can do to help you, let us know, and we will go from there, and we will get you up and running as quick as we can on this stuff. And best of luck. Let us know what we can do to further help you, and we'll be in touch. Thank you. Bye-bye.